Good evening. I wanted to make a short addendum video to the last video that I put up with regard to Judge Goss's instructions to the jury and how he brought in the previous convictions despite previously saying that only the evidence that was seen and heard in that trial should be of any consequence with regard to the jury's consideration of whether Lucy Letby was guilty or not guilty of the attempted murder of baby Kay. The additional statement he made is as follows. Judge Goss, the fact that she's been convicted of the offences in the past doesn't prove that she's committed this offence. Doesn't prove that she's committed this offence. Her previous convictions may only be used as some support for the prosecution case if, having assessed the evidence, you're satisfied that it is right so to do. Again, that might look superficially plausible, but it makes it a whole lot worse, in my opinion. I'm going to try to explain why I think that by unpacking it a little bit. Horrible phrase, unpacking, but there we are. Okay, so it doesn't prove it. It doesn't prove it, but if you are going to bring it in, and the only way you would not bring it in, according to his previous statements, is that you independently, as I say, don't believe that Lucy Letby was guilty of any crimes before, and that all the other convictions are miscarriages of justice. And that's what I kept on saying about the burden that he's placing on them. So necessarily, and as he knows, as he very well knows, Goss I'm talking about, they will bring it in. And it will be used then as some support, quite a vague term. If it's being used as some support, it's clearly not in contravention in any way of the prosecution's case. It's to bolster it. So again, subtext here is that you can bolster, if you've got any doubts about what you've seen about the prosecution case, in point of fact, it was smashed by the defence. So if that's rocked your world a little bit and you're thinking about a not guilty, don't worry, bring them in and you'll have all the support you need because of the previous convictions. It's just another way of saying you may supplant everything you've heard in this trial, all the evidence which has been undermined by the defence, all the prosecution evidence which has been torn to pieces and shown to be, if not completely fabricated, pretty much worthless. There's no evidence against Lucy Letby that she did anything wrong to baby Kay or indeed to any of the other babies. But in that trial, there's no evidence whatsoever that was shown. But as Goss says, unless you can, based on what he says before, unless you can independently decide the whole thing was a miscarriage of justice, then you can bring in all those convictions as support. And the point of that support is to supplant the whole trial. So it's just a reiteration of what I said in the previous video. It's really to make of nothing everything that was seen and heard in that trial, and just to say, well, don't worry about it. You've got the history of the convictions here. I'm going to term it as some support, but that's a kind of weasel words, mealy-mouthed, manipulative, sly way of saying it's all the damn support you need to not make you trouble your head about anything that, had this case just been tried completely in isolation, had no history in your minds about Lucy Letby and the other convictions, then you would have found her not guilty. But you can use this as some support. He says some support, but what is he saying with some support? He's talking about 7 charges of murder. He's talking about somebody being characterised and deemed a serial killer all over the world. He's talking about a further eight charges of attempted murder. Never mind that a few of them, quite a number of the other ones didn't reach a verdict, and there were 2 not guilties. So, which he would never deign to mention those, would he? It would always be on the basis of convictions rather than on anything exculpatory from that previous trial. There's more in here. There's more. Her previous convictions may only be used as some support for the prosecution case, and this is where it gets quite muddy as well, in terms of how the jury would have heard this statement, how they would have heard the meta-language or the subtext of it. If, having assessed the evidence, you're satisfied that it is right so to do. So when he says the evidence, when he says the evidence, he's talking about, what is he talking about? The evidence in that trial? The trial of June 2024? If he's talking about the evidence in that trial, and he's saying it's right so to do to bring in this support, what would that mean? Does that mean that if the evidence in this trial has satisfied you, well then bring that in as even more support? But why would you need it? If you've assessed the evidence given to you in this trial to the point that it's right to consider the previous convictions, and what does right mean in this circumstance? What does it mean? Well, it's right to bolster it with extra support. If you were in a state of mind that you'd looked at all that evidence, even though the prosecution's case was smashed, but you still believed the evidence was brilliant, does that lead you into a position, a logical position, where you think it's right so to do, to bring in extra support? But why would you do that then? You would do it for the reasons I mentioned a few minutes ago, because you're supplanting it. It wasn't good enough, but I need something else. Don't make me. I don't want to put not guilty because I'm aware that Lucy Letby's been convicted of all those other murders and attempted murders. Don't make me do that. Give me the opportunity to rely on all the convictions, will you? And he does it. He serves it up to them. He gives it to them, and then it becomes the fait accompli, the accomplished fact. If, on the other hand, he's talking to a jury that may be in a situation where they've heard all the evidence in that trial in June, and they've come to a conclusion that on one side that they're satisfied with that evidence, well, they wouldn't need any other support, would they? It's right so to do. What does it mean? Right in what sense? Right because you need it? And if you did need that as extra support, why would you need it as extra support? Why do you need support? The only reason you'd need support is because the case hasn't been proved. And if the case has been proved, then you wouldn't need the support either, would you? You wouldn't need the support. Again, he's handing it over to them, placing the burden on them to say, and how they're hearing it is, I've got doubts about this, the timings are all wrong, the Nurse Williams, the alarms, Jairam is a bloody awful witness, his story's changing left, right and centre. But I'm concerned that we're not going to give justice to the family of baby Kay and baby Kay herself. Oh God, I've got to go. I need something else. Please give me something else. And the judge supplies it. Yeah. Look for this to support. And don't worry your little heads about the fact that you weren't shown sufficient evidence, or that what you were shown was shot down in flames by the defence. And then contrariwise, if there were people on the jury that somehow were absolutely enamoured of all that evidence and didn't see what was happening or fell asleep, I've heard reports on Twitter people who went to the trial that, one or two one person in the jury was like falling asleep and didn't seem to be paying attention, and the judge himself was looking very, very sleepy, and I'm not saying he was asleep, but he was looking a bit out of it and like he wanted a nap a lot of the time. That's a report from someone else. I realise that's hearsay. I didn't see it myself. Nonetheless, I'll see if there's I'm going to read it through again, see if there's anything else in this. So this video obviously comes off the back of the previous video I did, and just for the fullness of explanation about why I feel the way I do about those first two statements. This is the additional statement he made. I'll read it again. The fact that she's been convicted of the offences in the past doesn't prove that she's committed this offence. No, it does. It doesn't prove it, and he couldn't explicitly say that it would prove it. We know that he can't explicitly say that it proves it, but it tips the balance for it. It makes it a shoo-in. It makes it an easy thing to do, which is why it was an easy thing to do, which is why they took a couple of hours. And they took a couple of hours despite the prosecution's case getting hammered. Her previous convictions may only be used as some support. Well, some. What does some mean? Could be 80%, couldn't it? What does it mean? It means what you want it to mean. It means what you want it to mean when you hear it as a member of the jury. It either tips the balance, or it can be the alpha to the omega. It can be all of it if you need it to be. And he knows that. Goss knows that when he's saying it. It's a little card that he's handing out saying, don't worry, you know what to do, and I know you know what to do. Here's the green card for it. Here's the green card. This will free your consciences up. If you're in any doubt at all, just bring in the other convictions. Just bring in the other convictions. And then again, he places the burden on them as well, psychologically, saying, but only if you're satisfied that it's right to do so. So what would be the mechanism for any individual jury member to decide or not to decide whether it's right to do so? What would that even mean? What does that even mean? What does that even mean in practice? Well, what could it mean? What could be an example of what it means? That somebody in that jury is thinking, it can only mean one of two things, really. Or probably only one thing that is instrumental in potentially changing what their verdict might have been. And it's that they're a little bit on the fence, or that they've just sat through a trial in which prosecution's case has been smashed to pieces, and they kind of, for some reason or other, don't want to just go with that. But why don't they just want to go with that? Why don't they just want to go with that, if that is the case? Well, it's been made very easy for them, and they're told that, you can just feel it's right to do it. It's Goss saying to them, I'm handing it over to you, jury. You can just feel it's right. Just feel it is right. What does that mean? What does that actually mean? You can feel it's right to do it. What does that mean in relation to the evidence presented on both sides in the attempted murder Baby K trial? What does it mean in relation to that evidence? It means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. How fitting it is, how right it feels for them to bring all those convictions in means nothing. It is anti that process of justice specific to that trial, is it not? Is it not? I don't want to flog a dead horse here. I mean, dead in the sense that he's killed justice in that courtroom. He's killed it. He's killed it because it was going the wrong way. It was going the wrong way for the prosecution, and I maintain that this is a corrupt judge. And I don't think it's a mistake. I don't think he was just blabbing here. I think it's policy. Policy based on how he saw the trial was going. And he gave them an out, and he gave them a direction. And he placed it in their minds that it's all right. Just base it on the last trial. It's all right. Don't worry. Just base it on the last trial and we're good and we can get out of here and I can go and have a nap. Judge Goss. I can go and have a nap, catch 40 winks and then go down to the club for a club soda or whatever he has, Whiskey Collins, something like that. Anyway, that's it. It's just shameful. There's probably more in there to pull apart, but that's fundamentally what I think of that. That's a supplementary statement that he made after the other two statements. And I'll put the picture up again. Well, you'll have seen it already if I manage to do it. Yeah, it's some support. Some can become all. Some's doing some heavy lifting there. It can be as much as you want it to be and as much as you need it to be to get it over the line. And never mind a damn word you heard about Jayaram's story getting absolutely hammered, smashed to pieces. Never mind that. Never mind all the police's mistakes over the timings of the data for the door swipes. So yeah, that's it. That's pretty much it. Thank you.